Avowed is an upcoming action RPG from Obsidian Entertainment. Through trailers, developer interviews, extended gameplay showcases, and creator previews, we've gained a deeper understanding of what Avowed has to offer. After reading and exploring tons of content on Avowed, I put together this video for you, answering questions such as, what can we expect from the game's story and setting? How does combat feel in play? And what role-playing elements will the game feature? And more. So get ready to dive in as we explore everything you need to know about Avowed. Obsidian Entertainment has a well-developed reputation in the gaming space that spans the last 15 years. They produce titles such as The Outer Worlds, Pillars of Eternity, and the Grounded series. They most famously produced the critically acclaimed Fallout New Vegas as well, but that was of course many years ago and the studio makeup has changed since then. Their newest upcoming title, Avowed, is a primarily first-person RPG set in the fantasy universe of Eora, blending rune-based magic, swordplay, and firearms into its combat system. Obsidian is hoping that Avowed can be the next great fantasy RPG. Avowed has been in development for over 5 years and is one of Obsidian's longest-running projects. It marks Obsidian's first AAA title under Microsoft Gaming since the 2018 acquisition, and is one of 2 major Obsidian projects currently in the pipeline alongside The Outer Worlds 2. Avowed releases on February 18th, 2025, which places the Obsidian RPG in a competitive February launch window. It was originally set to release in November 2024, but was delayed to, quote, give players' backlogs some breathing room. But Avowed finds itself once again in a very competitive space. It launches in a crowded February launch window alongside major titles like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Assassin's Creed Shadows, as well as 2 other games releasing on the same day, Monster Hunter Wilds and Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza, which has sparked some debate about whether Avowed can carve out the spotlight among such a competitive lineup. It really could be a challenge. Xbox has announced that Avowed will now be available for pre-order in standard, premium digital, and steelbook editions. The premium edition comes in priced at $89.99 and includes up to 5 days of early access to the game before its official launch. Slightly off topic, but I'm not sure about you, but I'm kind of really over the whole pay-to-play early trend. It feels like it casts a shadow over what could be otherwise a fantastic game, and honestly, I just wish developers would leave this practice behind. But that's just my opinion. Let me know yours in the comments below. The Steelbook edition of Avowed includes the Avowed Steelbook Iron Case, the Rich Land map poster, the luxury styling set, developer's letter, and the Avowed digital art set and soundtrack. Avowed is available on PC and Xbox Series X with Day 1 access for Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscribers. While a PS5 release is uncertain, Xbox has been expanding its exclusives to other platforms, with Indiana Jones and the Great Circle set to launch on PS5 after a period of exclusivity. So could the same thing happen for Avowed? It's possible. Avowed is a single-player focused RPG, but in its early development stages, it was envisioned by Obsidian to include a large multiplayer aspect. However, the development team, including studio head Fergus Urquhart, eventually recognized that the focus on a co-op multiplayer was diverting them from their studio strengths, engaging and crafting single-player experiences that really pulled players in. This made them pivot towards emphasizing those single-player RPG elements, ensuring Avowed would more closely align with Obsidian's reputation for compelling narrative-driven games. Some have described Avowed as a silly version of Skyrim, which is not necessarily the developer's goal, but it does kind of highlight Obsidian's intent to deliver a game that has a more light or whimsical tone about it. And throughout its development, it has gained those comparisons to Skyrim, it's particularly because it's an RPG, and then at the beginning there were just huge expectations on the game, but the team at Obsidian has made it clear that they are not trying to achieve a huge open world like Skyrim. They're not trying to make a Skyrim clone or their version of Skyrim. They want to focus on their studio strengths and make a game that reflects that. Avowed is set in the Pillars of Eternity universe, bringing players back to Eora. For context, Pillars of Eternity is another RPG franchise from Obsidian. It's a series of isometric RPGs set in the detailed world of Eora. The games feature deep storytelling, tactical combat, and meaningful choices, allowing you to create a custom protagonist, recruit unique companions, and explore complex themes such as souls, religion, and politics. And it pays a clear homage to classic CRPGs, and really solidified Obsidian's reputation as a major force in the RPG genre. if it wasn't already. As you'll see in this video, Avowed has many similar gameplay themes or qualities about it, even if the gameplay style is quite different. Obsidian is still focusing on its storytelling strengths while also looking to once again focus on strong companions and narrative themes. Even though they're in the same universe, Avowed takes place in a previously unexplored segment of Eora known as the Living Lands. It's designed as a standalone entry, so no prior knowledge of the series is required to understand it, which focuses on a devastating plague that is sweeping over the Living Lands. Eora distinguishes itself from typical medieval fantasy settings by leaning more toward a period akin to the Age of Sail, characterized by the prevalent use of gunpowder and the prominence of tall ships. This world combines classic fantasy elements with the addition of gunpowder, expanding the RPG arsenal with flintlock pistols and other firearms. Initially envisioned as a sprawling open-world experience similar to Skyrim, Avowed has been reimagined by Obsidian to emphasize the studio's strengths in storytelling and focused exploration. Obsidian CEO Fergus Urquhart explained that the game shifted toward a more narrative-driven and compartmentalized design, akin to the Outer Worlds. Set within the Living Lands, Avowed features distinct zones, each with its own unique environments, from lush forests to arid deserts and areas warped by magical corruption. This approach allows for rich storytelling, meaningful character interactions, and engaging companion dynamics within each region. Instead of spreading content thin across a massive open world, Obsidian aims to deliver densely packed areas full of secrets, quests, and diverse characters. Game director Kerry Patel emphasized that this design allows you to explore the world at your own pace, whether through uncovering hidden lore, completing side quests, or just pursuing the main story. By focusing on interconnected zones rather than one vast open world, Avowed looks to balance these detailed environments with freedom of exploration and creating a more streamlined experience. In an interview with PC Gamer, Fergus Urquhart explained that while the idea of creating a massive open world was tempting, the studio chose a more controlled and focused environment. Urquhart said, quote, "We could go off and create an 8km by 8km open world and then deal with all the consequences of that, because that makes it a different style of game. But we want to tell more confined stories that the player can experience with their companions and then move from one part of the world to another. In the end, that's who we are." This approach emphasizes quality over quantity and really tries to align with Obsidian's storytelling strengths.
That's enough for now. We got a listener.
The Living Lands is inspired by real-world cultures. Avowed's world is divided into distinct zones, each with its own subzones and unique characteristics. While the full scope of the map is still unknown, there are several key regions that have been revealed, each offering diverse environments and settlements. One such zone is Dawnshore, a coastal and plains region with a temperate climate. Within Dawnshore lies the Eastern Overlands, a hilly area overlooking the port, and Paradise, a large port settlement. Another zone is Emerald Stair, a vibrant jungle forest that includes a swamp area. The region is home to Fior, a town and settlement of animancers, or scholars who study soul science, looking to hide away from the prying eyes of authority. From gameplay footage we've seen, this is a colorful location at night, very beautiful, illuminated by the purple lights due to the work of these animancers. Shatterscarp, another region in the Living Lands, stands out for its arid wastes and beautiful oases. This desert-like area is home to the Rowatawan settlers, known for their fun but militaristic culture centered in the settlement of Third Born. Shatterscarp has been significantly affected by the Dream Scourge, a plague that corrupts souls within the Living Lands. Lastly, Galawain's Tusks is a mountainous, rocky zone near an active volcano. It is home to Sullus, a settlement of Pargrunan mountain dwarves and one of 3 known permanent Pargrunan communities in Eora. According to the Avowed wiki, there may be another quote, unnamed final region, possibly part of the in-between. But as I said earlier, we've still not seen the full scope and scale of the map for Avowed, so hopefully we'll see a little bit more here in the near future. As the story progresses, regions are unlocked in sequence, with each serving as a chapter of the main quest. These areas feature their own series of side quests and local issues that tie into the broader narrative of the Living Lands. Although regions become accessible in a specific order, you have the freedom to revisit previously explored areas at any time. One of Avowed's strengths is the game's narrative, driven by the talented team at Obsidian. Obsidian is building upon their own world, Eora, which gives them a leg up when it comes to writing a compelling story in an already established universe. This allows them to fully focus on creating characters with great personalities and detailed backstories that connect to the overarching world. Avowed's initial trailer set the stage in a medieval empire that once thrived under the rule of queens and kings, but has now fallen into decay and corruption. This downfall has unleashed monstrous foes that roam the world, posing a constant threat. The story of Avowed unfolds in the Living Lands, a remote and previously overlooked island that has managed to stay under the radar of Eora's major colonial powers, including the dominant Aedyr Empire. In Avowed, you are chosen as an envoy to the Living Lands, a wild frontier plagued by the Dream Scourge. Your mission is to uncover the roots of this terrible plague, which is hinted to be a symptom of a deeper, more dangerous problem. Avowed story trailers suggest that deception is at play, with a voice revealing hidden truths and urging you to see beyond the surface. The trailer encourages you to, quote, become what the Living Lands truly needs, its protector, and to choose your side. Avowed story involves navigating distrust from locals and uncovering the truth behind the plague's origins and its effects, with Carrie Patel saying, quote, this game is very much about choosing your loyalties and choosing what matters most to you. Avowed takes place after the events of Pillars of Eternity 2: Deadfire. While not a direct sequel, the game acknowledges and builds upon the transformative events of Deadfire. And as we've seen, the Avowed Gamescom preview included a quest that directly references Deadfire, involving a priest of Aeothus, the central deity and antagonist of the second game. However, Avowed pushes the timeline forward, exploring how Eora's people are grappling with these monumental changes. As we've learned, our character is a godlike. The godlike are kith in Eora who are blessed by a god, making them revered by many and feared by others. They have a unique connection to their god, with appearances varying greatly based on the god who chose them. Any kith race can be born a godlike, but they cannot reproduce. This divine blessing can also be a curse at times, complicating things like relationships for them. This dual role creates early tensions, as your character is both an outsider and deeply connected to the unfolding mysteries. The godlike status, marked by its unique physical appearance, adds complexity as it resembles signs of the plague, leading to suspicion and wariness from others. For example, one mission involves a scout who accuses you of being infected based on your character's markings. And Carrie Patel added, quote, there's always this really neat mix of a very grounded political story and then this kind of more mysterious, esoteric, metaphysical story about souls and past lives and the gods and all of these weirder mysteries. And one thing that we worked with very early on was, how do we give the player stakes in both of these stories and a foot in each of those worlds? One of those ways Avowed is trying to do that is through player choice. Avowed looks to explore themes of power, colonization, and the consequences of empire, all while offering you the chance to influence the course of events based on your actions and decisions. Player choice is at the heart of Avowed, shaping key elements such as quests, combat, and exploration. In Avowed, you encounter quests that demand difficult decisions with significant consequences, often delving into morally complex and nuanced scenarios. The game also boasts impressive character visuals and voice acting, with dialogue choices offering multiple options and the ability to review your conversation history. These branching dialogues range from minor decisions to major choices that impact individuals, communities, and the broader narrative. And dialogue and writing is an area where Avowed really appears to shine. Obsidian is known for good characters and writing, so this is an area I think can help Avowed really stand out. I love even small details like being able to review your conversation history, because that's not something you can do in every game. And it's a small thing, but I like that because even half the time I've forgotten what I've chosen in the past, or what the conversation had went to or led to in the past. And these small details can add up, and if you get enough of those small details right, the bigger picture really comes together. If you're new to the world of Eora, the game includes something called lore tool tips, which can be accessed during dialogue to understand various terms you may not understand. From its opening sequence, Avowed offers opportunities for exploration, side quests, and impactful decisions. For example, Heather from Games Radar described an encounter with a prisoner whose fate is left up to your judgment. You can choose to free her or leave her imprisoned, with your decision shaping the gameplay. If you help her, she joins you in battle and contributes to future conversations. In an early gameplay example that we've seen, our player character encounters a situation where a crew of people have been ambushed and you have to hear from two different perspectives, Sergeant Hasui and Private Naoki. After conversing with Private Naoki, he admits that he abandoned his crew after an ambush by Zorops. Depending on how you want to respond, you can choose to empathize and console Naoki, or you can challenge his courage, or lack thereof, and each choice leads to different outcomes, including the possibility of a confrontation with Naoki, which might end in some bloodshed. Game director Carrie Patel has confirmed that Avowed offers multiple endings for you to experience, depending on the choices you make in game. reinforcing the notion that your decisions will have a serious impact on the game's outcome, just like their previous titles. Unlike a simplistic cause and effect system, Avowed aims to present a more nuanced interaction with the game world, where the emphasis is on your interpretation and understanding of the consequences of your actions. With Carrie Patel stating that their ending slides number in the double digits and that you can end up with a lot of different combinations of them. She further stated, quote, "Your ending is really the sum total of your choices across the game, across a lot of pieces of content, depending on what you encountered and what you did when you found it." Regarding whether Avowed has a true canon ending, Carrie Patel states that she feels that there is never a true canon ending. She also notes that not every quest in Avowed carries monumental stakes. Some have profound implications for the game world, while others focus on more personal stories involving specific characters. Now, Avowed will not have open exploration after you beat the game, and features a clear point of no return. Like previous Obsidian games, Avowed will have ending slides for the various ending options you can get at the end of the game. And unlike a game like Skyrim, once you reach the ending, your story and exploration are over. However, you'll likely be able to revert back to the point of no return, so you can explore things that you may have missed, but nothing past that point. According to Carrie Patel, the playtime for Avowed is roughly similar to that of the Outer Worlds, with Carrie stating, quote, "Players can expect a more or less similar experience like the Outer Worlds depending on the difficulty level they play and how thoroughly they explore and invest in the content, rather than sticking to the main storyline. That would indicate around 20 hours for the main story content and closer to 40 plus hours for a 100% run. But that's just a rough estimate, as time will vary person to person. Avowed is designed to be replayable, so the shorter runtime may be a draw for a lot of people. Personally, I enjoy huge epic RPGs drawn out over a massive landscape, but I also happily welcome games like Avowed that provide a more concise, streamlined experience, and I think it's a breath of fresh air. In the world of Eora, the term Kith refers to races that consider themselves civilized. This includes various subraces of humans, standard fantasy elves and dwarves, the large and web-footed Amwawa, and the feline-like Orlans. In Avowed, your character is a godlike, a Kith who is blessed with a physical mutation by the gods. But contrary to the wide range of races available in Pillars of Eternity, Avowed limits your choices to just humans and elves. From a narrative perspective, the game is set within the Aedyr Empire, which is a region predominantly inhabited by humans and elves, which serves as the primary rationale for this restriction. However, there were also some developmental considerations as well when it comes to using characters that have different shapes and sizes, with Carrie Patel stating, quote, "We want to make sure that whatever experience we're offering is smooth and natural and well paced to the player. And one of the things about the species of pillars that I think is a lot easier to account for in an isometric game is just the variation in sizes. You have a Mwawa, and then you have humans and elves who are at roughly the same scale, and then you have Orlans and dwarves who are quite a bit smaller. And for each of those, especially in first person, you're adjusting the height of the player's character capsule and sort of where their weapons are relative to enemies, and how their hits land and how hits land on them. And it's obviously not that any of these things are impossible to solve, but you're always making choices and choosing your priorities and development. Although the limitation to humans and elves is somewhat disappointing, the explanation does make sense. It's always a plus when an RPG provides more opportunities for customization, but I do understand this limitation. As a godlike, you can customize your character with unique features and mutations. These mutations can be very subtle or loud and proud. Some examples include natural elements such as fungal-like growths or tree bark. These mutations in the world of Eora have ties back to the gods that have blessed that individual, which I'm sure is really cool for those that have deep knowledge of the PoE games. You also have the ability to choose a background, which can influence mechanics like attributes, abilities, and dialogue options, adding some depth to your character's role. In Avowed, attributes are a set of 6 stats that define various aspects of your character and influence their combat abilities. They also play a role when engaged in conversations and interactions with other characters, where certain attribute levels can unlock or activate unique dialogue options not available to those with a lower rank. All attributes start at 0 and can be increased up to a maximum of 10. Each attribute receives a base value of 1 or 2 depending on the choices made during character creation. And these attributes can be upgraded as your character levels up or by equipping gear that provides specific bonuses. And one of the cool things about Avowed is that you can respec your attributes at any time by spending copper, which refunds all points and resets the attributes back to their original base values. So here's a quick summary of the attributes. The first one is Might, and Might is absolutely critical in Avowed. It increases your damage for both weapons and magic, and it also increases your carrying capacity, which is the amount you can carry before becoming over-encumbered, making it pretty essential for all character builds. Constitution enhances your health and resistance to poison and bleeding effects. Dexterity improves attack speed for both weapons and abilities, as well as your action speed. This includes things like reload speed, parkour actions, and item usage, and also sounds like a key stat for those wanting to be quick and effective. Perception increases your critical hit chance and weapon range, benefiting any of those ranged weapons like guns, bows, and wands. Intellect raises your maximum essence needed for spellcasting and resistance to burn, shocks, and freeze effects. And finally, Resolve increases your max stamina and the effectiveness of the second wind ability, aiding you in revival. Backgrounds in Avowed serve as your origin story, detailing your rise in the Aedyr court and life before being sent to the living lands. You can choose from 5 backgrounds which primarily influence dialogue and role-playing elements, shaping your character's perspective and reinforcing their experiences. However, your character's role as an Aedyr and envoy is set no matter which background you choose, with Carrie Patel further stating, quote, "A huge part of the game and exploring and really defining your role in it is about the choices you make moment to moment. There are skills that also have an impact in dialogue that will unlock certain options for you. The player will get to choose a background at the very beginning of the game that kind of flavors, here's who you were before the mission, here's how you came to prominence." So let's go over the backgrounds in Avowed as reported by Leon Hurley at Games Radar. The Arcane Scholar is an excellent starting option for magic-focused builds in Avowed. It emphasizes dexterity, perception, and intellect, enhancing your spellcasting, range, and attack speed. And it also has a decent might stat for strong initial damage. It has unique dialogue options that include insights into occult knowledge, legal precedent, historical observations, and poetry. The Arcane Scholar is a good choice for those magic-focused builds, excelling in spellcasting, speed, and range. The Court Augur is a highly specialized but really fragile magic background. It has no points in might or constitution and has the lowest damage and health of all the backgrounds. Its focus is on perception and intellect, providing strong range and magical power, but it doesn't have a lot else going on for it. The Court Augur's dialogue options reflect a mysterious and eccentric personality, emphasizing mysticism, shadowy powers, and deception. The Noble Scion is a somewhat balanced magic-focused background, emphasizing dexterity, perception, and intellect for speed, range, and magical power. Now, it's not a very specialized class. It does sacrifice some spellcasting ability to boost the constitution, providing more health and durability, and it makes it a more well-rounded class overall, but it's not as focused specifically on magic. In terms of dialogue options, the defining trait of this background is simply that this character comes from wealth. The Vanguard Scout is probably one of my favorites. It basically fits what I like to play as when I play in an RPG, and the Vanguard Scout is a rogue-like fighter focused on speed and ranged physical combat. So this is going to be your stealth archer class. It excels in agility and precision. However, if you don't plan to use ranged weapons, you could probably relocate some of your points from perception to might to increase your damage output. Dialogue options for the Vanguard Scout center around deception, tracking, and spying, reflecting the class's stealthy and tactical nature. And it's probably the class I'll end up starting with. Finally, the War Hero is the classic tanky fighter. It specializes in having a lot of high health, physical damage, and stamina. It excels at dealing and absorbing damage, but does not have any focus on magic. Dialogue options reflect a background of combat experience and battle scars, though they are less defined than some of these other backgrounds. But for a more detailed breakdown of each background, including specific stats and bonuses that they get, be sure and check out the Games Radar article linked down below. First up is crafting. Crafting in Avowed allows you to create or enhance items such as weapons, armor, shields, and grimoires. It can be done while exploring or at the party camp. Upgrading equipment improves its stats and combat effectiveness. To craft or enchant items, you need specific ingredients which can be bought or looted. While ingredients are usually consumed during crafting, some are reusable. Enchanting typically requires 3 types of ingredients with varying quantities of each. These components include critter parts, which are salvaged from defeated creatures such as pelts and monster parts, as well as plants and herbs, which are harvested from the environment, and gems, which are rare minerals. Some of the crafting in-game does have a copper cost, meaning you'll need to spend your coin alongside using your materials. Avowed blends magical spellcasting and melee combat in the lush fantasy world of the Living Lands. Build around player choice, Obsidian emphasizes your world, your way, offering flexible combat options. You can combine various spells with swords, axes, and shields, dual-wield pistols or wands, and explore other unique setups. The goal is to let you carve out your own path through the world of Eora. Combat is a core feature of Avowed, distinguished by its flexibility and variety of loadouts. One of the really cool things is you can switch seamlessly between weapons like wands, guns, swords, shields, bows, and grimoires for casting spells, encouraging experimentation to find your preferred fighting style. Each weapon comes with its own strengths and trade-offs. If you're going to use a very heavy weapon, obviously it's going to be slow, but it's going to be a lot stronger and require more precise timing for you to hit your enemies. Combat can be initiated seamlessly during exploration, allowing for various approaches to engage your enemies in the world. Stealth is a viable option in many situations, but there are some where it's not possible. And dialogue is a very helpful tool if you're trying to prevent combat or maybe get into it. There are some restrictions on combat in Avowed, particularly in settlements. There are certain locations where the combat is not allowed, and not everyone in the game can be killed. Avowed does not feature a kill everyone approach, where you can kill all the NPCs in the world like previous games. When attacking, there will be 3 types of attacks that are present: regular or light attacks, heavy and power attacks, as well as special attacks which can be performed on stunned enemies. Attack speed and action speed are 2 critical aspects of combat in Avowed. Attack speed refers to how quickly you perform attacks. Similar to other RPGs, the heavier the weapon or the heavier your armor that you have on, likely the more damage you're going to do, but the slower that you can move and attack. The same thing goes with action speed, which is how quickly your character moves and navigates combat. Lighter armor and weapons will allow your character to be faster, while heavier armor and weapons will slow you down. There are 3 types of damage delivered in Avowed: physical damage from melee strikes and ranged weapons like arrows and rifles. There is also magic damage from spells, which often disregards armor. And finally, there is elemental damage, including shock, freeze, burn, and corrosive damage. In Avowed, combat is designed for quick switching between spellcasting, sharpshooting, and melee. You can block with your shield, utilize the parry system, and make your combat style truly yours. Customizable loadouts can be switched using the D-pad, with 4 loadouts available to flip between. Or of course, you could also assign these on your keyboard if you play on PC. The goal is to make the combat feel free-flowing and allow you to experiment as you go. And this is probably one of the coolest things for the combat system for me, being able to really switch between 4 different loadouts that can be completely different. I think that is actually something that's really cool. I'm not sure if this is very frequently done in other games. I haven't seen a lot of games do this, but I think being able to switch between, maybe you want to have a wand in one situation, maybe you want to have a 2-handed sword for this enemy, being able to switch to different, weapon setups and things like that, I think is really cool. I think that's something that is going to add a lot to this system. Weapons and equipment in Avowed come in various quality tiers. There is common, fine, exceptional, and legendary, each being able to be upgraded 3 times within that quality tier. You can further add special enhancements to your weapons using cores. Weapons in Avowed include 1- and 2-handed melee weapons such as daggers, swords, great swords, and battle axes. There are also ranged weapons, from bows and crossbows to pistols and rifles, and magic wands. And many weapons can be dual-wielded for quick and snappy attacks. And weapon enchantments are available, allowing you to do things like wield a magical sword or shoot frozen arrows. The goal is to provide variety and options to keep things fresh. Avowed will have 3 combat skill trees where you can mix and match the different skills to fit your specific playstyle. Those trees include Fighter, Ranger, and Wizard, and it is up to you to decide where you want to put your points in for your specific character. With Carrie Patel stating, quote, "You can build a character that either follows one of those vibes very closely or takes the best of what you like from each. And if you decide you don't like your choices, you can pay a small fee and wipe them and build something entirely different." We've yet to see all the game has to offer, but Avowed offers a variety of abilities, including options to incapacitate enemies, engage in offensive and defensive maneuvers like area control and crowd management. You can combine effects creatively, such as igniting an area with flame and then pulling enemies into those flames. And the game's elemental effects can be applied through weapons or be used by your companions. These abilities also serve exploration purposes, such as freezing the water to create paths or burning obstacles in your way to access new areas. In Avowed, the ability screen features 5 areas. As we mentioned, Fighter, Ranger, and Wizard, but there is also Godlike and Companions, with the latter 2 being special ability trees. New abilities are available at levels 1, 5, 10, 15, and 20. Most abilities have 3 ranks, and they can either be passive or active. However, some abilities have 4 ranks while others just have 1 or 2. but most on average have 3. Active abilities in Avowed are skills your character can use during combat. Some take longer to cast, while others can be cast quickly. These abilities consume essence, which is a limited resource, with stronger abilities requiring more essence. Once used, the ability enters a cooldown period before you can cast it again. Each active ability is assigned to a specific key or button for easy activation. This system also applies to companions who have abilities that you can command them to use. However, some of these are context dependent. Passive abilities in Avowed provide automatic effects without needing to be cast or equipped in your ability slots. These can include permanent bonuses or conditional effects that trigger automatically in response to specific situations. Certain passives such as Power Jump and Shield Bash function like active abilities by consuming essence and having a cooldown. However, they can't be assigned or used like traditional active abilities. So let's discuss the ability trees in Avowed. Fighter abilities mostly focus on hand-to-hand combat, stamina buffs, medium to heavy armor, and blocking. It includes 19 abilities with 4 active and 15 passive. The 4 active abilities include Charge, which allows you to rush forward, breaking enemy blocks and dealing damage. It also allows you to break through blocks and destructible walls, confirming the presence of destructible environments in Avowed. Barbaric Shout allows you to let out a roar that interrupts enemies and makes your weapon attacks become uninterruptible, as well as dealing a higher stun. Into the Fray allows you to reach forward and pull an enemy towards you, which could be really helpful whenever you combine that with some of those elemental effects like burning the area, and then you could use Into the Fray to pull your enemies into that fire, which could be really helpful. There's also Clear Out, which causes you to spin in a whirlwind, becoming uninterruptible and hitting all nearby enemies. Other passive abilities in the fighter tree include those that enhance stamina and health regeneration, increase weapon damage, and allow the deflection of projectiles back at enemies. Ranger abilities mostly focus on ranged combat, including bows and guns, stealth, and light armor. This tree includes 18 abilities with 4 active and 14 passive. The 4 active abilities include Tanglefoot, allowing you to summon vines to snare and entangle your enemies. Shadowing Beyond, which I think is really cool. It allows you to become invisible, phasing into the spiritual world to move stealthily. There's also Bear Ally, allowing you to summon a bear companion to fight with you for a short period of time. And Flurry of Blows, increasing your attack speed, stamina regeneration, and movement speed for a short time. Other passive abilities include those that enhance weapon damage and stun effects, slow time when aiming with bows or guns, and provide increased health and essence bonuses. The Wizard tree is probably the biggest and most impressive in Avowed, with a total of 33 different abilities, 22 active and 11 passive. It features a more intricate skill tree that requires higher level grimoires to use higher level skills. Some spells can even be found in grimoires which can be cast without learning them in the tree. The active abilities include those centered around elemental damage, including burn, freeze, corrosion, and shock. It includes things like firing magical projectiles, creating violent storms, sending out fireballs, summoning a magical bow, and I think the coolest one, raining down destructive meteors, which is an ability that I'm definitely going to have. For a more detailed look at each ability, including ranks, cost, duration, and cooldowns, I will link the Avowed wiki page on abilities down below. They have tons of great information on Avowed, and I'm sure they're going to be adding a lot more when the game is released. As I mentioned earlier, there are also 2 other trees known as godlike abilities and companion abilities. These have not yet been revealed as far as I know at the time of making this video. Avowed will feature what's referred to as a party camp. Entering a party camp serves as both a narrative and an upgrade hub. At the camp, you can get to know your companions better, learning about their backstories and listening to their banter, which helps to make the world feel more alive. The companion interactions range from fun and quirky to somber reflections about the ongoing story. These moments of banter and conflict help to deepen the story and narrative, especially as you face difficult choices throughout the game. And one of the cool things about Avowed is that there's a large amount of dialogue, and some of these conversations can get pretty deep and they can go for a long time. And so one of the cool things is that if you can go as far as you want to, you can listen to all the dialogue, you can learn about these characters' backstories and the history of the world, but you can also just choose to go through it and move on with the main story, not really caring about your companions or learning too much about them, which is fine as well. But I'm glad that there is that option. And of course, as we talked about earlier, there is the ability to review conversation histories in certain situations, which I think will definitely help me along the way. So I think there's a lot of good features here in the gameplay features. And so I'm just, I'm excited for these little things that are going to be included in the game. So be sure and let me know your thoughts as well. Companions and characters are another area where Avowed shines. Obsidian's sharp writing and the great voice actors they secure bring their characters to life. In Avowed, companions serve as both allies and guides as you traverse the living lands. They have strong ties to the area and assist you in various ways. Despite featuring prominent companions, the game will not include any co-op or multiplayer elements. It's purely single player. Companions play a key role in Avowed. You can adventure with 2 companions at a time, with additional companions waiting at the player camp. They assist in combat, offering environmental skills, and provide access to their abilities through a radial wheel. You can also spend time with them at a party camp to learn new skills and uncover their personal stories. Each companion has unique motives, combat specialties, and reactions to your choices. And Avowed features 4 companions who can join you in your party. One such companion is Kai, a coastal Amawa that resides in the living lands. As one of the first companions in the game, Kai is originally from Rauti and is characterized as a former soldier with an idealistic and pragmatic temperament. He is depicted as one of the few friendly faces in the living lands, promising to be a guiding presence in your journey through the wild frontier. And Kai is voiced by Brandon Keener, who also voiced Garrus in Mass Effect. Described by Gabe Paramo as a tank, Kai has an ability that allows him to taunt enemies and draw their aggression away from you, providing crucial support in combat. He can also help with obstacles like burning brambles that may be blocking a pathway. In the gameplay trailer, Kai actually mentions that our character scares his people, saying, quote, "You're either here to save us or destroy us," further emphasizing the distrust the local people have for us and how difficult it may be to win some of those people over as we journey through the living lands. Another companion is Giada Castell. Giada is a healer and believes that chaos is inherent to the living lands and should be nurtured, not quelled. Giada comes from Fior Mez Iverno, a community of animancers in the living lands founded around 50 years ago. After losing her parents in a lab accident, she is determined to complete the research and make a lasting contribution to the study of souls. She has a strong will and will often defy authority. Giada carries the phantasmal focus, the invention linked to her family's tragedy, leaving questions about how she will yield its power. There is also Yatsley, an Orlan wizard. Described by Carrie as risque, Yatsley is fun to talk to and will flirt back with your character if you flirt with her. Although, as we'll discuss, full romances are not featured in Avowed. As a scholar, Yatsley studies the godless, an ancient people who once inhabited the living lands, now only remembered through their ruins. From her cosplay guide, we can learn this. Practically born with a grimoire in hand, Yatsley has been slinging spells and taunts her whole life. While she lives in Fior with her loving partner, she's more often found in the ruins dotting the living lands. Yatsley relishes leaving an impression on all she meets, good or bad. There is also a dwarven companion known as Marius. From his cosplay guide, we can learn this. Marius is a recent transplant from Solace, an isolated Pargrunan keep in the harsh region of Galawain's Tusks. Born in one of the most uninhabitable areas in the living lands, Marius learned quickly how to survive, and even thrive in the wilderness, becoming one of the land's most sought after hunters and guides. The downside is, now that he has left Solace for the wilder wilderness, he has yet to find a place to call home, and he feels far more comfortable facing the dangers and hazards of the wild than he does among the comforts of civilization. In Avowed, Obsidian places an emphasis on the role of companion characters, making them a fundamental part of the gameplay. Unlike some games where they are merely optional or additional firepower, Avowed aims to make these characters essential for your story and your journey. They're not just allies in combat, but they are integral to the unfolding story because they are from these locations. These stories are supposed to have a personal effect on them. Certain scenarios require the unique skills or knowledge of specific companions, adding a layer of strategy and decision making to who you're going to bring along with you, and clearly draws inspirations from CRPGs like their previous game, Pillars of Eternity. Avowed is designed so that every companion is relevant to every playthrough, ensuring that you don't want to overlook recruiting any of the characters. Companions are useful both in and out of combat. While you can issue basic orders to your party, the game does not require micromanagement akin to tactical games, and the system is reminiscent of those found in the Mass Effect series. Companions and other characters will react to your actions and decisions, offering feedback that may praise or condemn your choices, and it aims to make the consequences of your actions more apparent and tied directly to your previous decisions, enhancing the sense of impact on the game world. However, the game does not rely on a conventional morality meter, and unlike games with an approval system for companions, Avowed does not feature mechanics where companions might leave due to dissatisfaction with your choices. Cough, cough, Starfield, cough, cough. However, your decisions will still impact the individual storylines of Avowed's companions, with Carrie Patel stating, quote, One of the fun challenges with design, particularly around consequences, or even sometimes around player options that are reactive to either the kind of character you built or choices you've made earlier in the game, is over the years I've learned that stuff is always a lot less obvious to the player than to the designer. And so I think sometimes you have to be a bit more direct in tying those options and those consequences to content that's come before. Because if it feels too natural and too understated, it feels like a thing that's happening, not a thing that's happening because of what you did. So in summary, your companions will let you know if they approve of what you do, they'll let you know if they think you're acting like a jerk, but they're not going to just up and leave your group because you've done something they don't agree with, which I think is a lot better than a system where they leave just because you've done something they don't like. As mentioned earlier, Avowed does not have the option to romance characters or companions in game. When discussing this with IGN, Carrie Patel stated, quote, "We are building thoughtful relationships with our companion characters. Ultimately, I am personally a fan of making that an option, but I feel like if you're going to do it, you really have to commit and make sure that you're giving all to fulfilling that in a way that feels both true to the character, but also creates an engaging player experience. So not something we're doing for Avowed, but I wouldn't say never. Some companions like Yatsley will flirt with you during conversations, but there's no full-on romances in Avowed."
If you keep encouraging her, she's going to climb you.
Careful, darling. I already have a lover. A good one. Skilled with his hands.
And it will definitely be disappointing to some. I do appreciate that when developers understand that this is something they are not going to focus on, they don't put their attention into it and they focus on other things. Sure, it could be a very simple system that is implemented to the game, but if they don't feel like they're doing it to the best of their ability and it's not something they want to put their name on, totally understand why not including that in the game is totally okay with me, but be sure and let me know what you think down below. In Avowed, Obsidian is building on its established lore from the Pillars of Eternity universe. Eora's sentient races are divided into two main groups, the Kith and the Wilders. The Kith consider themselves the civilized races of Eora, those being the humans, dwarves, Orlans, Amwawa, and their godlike descendants. In contrast, the Wilders are deemed uncivilized by the Kith, even if they have a lot of intelligence within their groups. Avowed features numerous Wilders, beasts, and other creatures we've seen throughout the various gameplay trailers and deep dives. One that we've seen a lot of are Zurups, which are reptilian humanoid creatures about the same height as Orlans. They worship dragons and build their communities near dragon lairs. However, sometimes they end up actually being sacrificed and eaten by the dragons. And it's said that this actually happens frequently. Zurups decorate themselves with the bones of their enemies, and although they are classified as uncivilized Wilders, this perception is due to their hostility toward outsiders rather than them lacking intelligence. Trolls in Avowed are about twice as tall as humans and covered in these fungal growths that help them with camouflage, as well as providing them enzymes for food when food is scarce. In the primary setting of the Living Lands, explorers might mistake trolls for trees, only to realize the danger as the trolls lie in ambush. So definitely something to look out as you're exploring. It's likely we'll also encounter some of the other Wilders from the PoE universe, such as Ogres, Skolder, and Vithric. There's likely to also be new creatures to encounter and face off against as well. We've also seen plague-infected creatures like bears and the undead, and there's also numerous beasts to face off against, such as giant spiders, wolves, and boars, to name a few. There will also be other creatures from the PoE universe, those considered vessels, spirits, and primordials that will appear. And in gameplay footage, we've already seen some of those primordials, those being the fungus-like sporelings as well as forest spirits known as Delimgon. However, that is not the full extent of all the different things that will be in Avowed. Of course, there's going to be more. There's going to be probably new things that we'll see, but just wanted to give you guys kind of a quick overview of that. Ultimately, I am excited for Avowed, and I feel it can deliver as a fun, character-driven RPG. Those who have gotten an early look at Avowed, such as content creators and game journalists, generally have had positive things to say about the game, highlighting the game's beautiful and detailed world, its lively characters and fun writing, as well as the immersive elements Obsidian has cultivated. I think Avowed has an opportunity to carve itself out as something different and fresh in the RPG space, and I'm excited to see more. Be sure and let me know which element of Avowed you are most excited for. Also, please consider subscribing to the channel if you enjoyed the video. It'd be very much appreciated. I put a lot of time into it and I hope it was helpful. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.